is one of the first weeks you've come to our church, this is a good week because we're starting a new sermon series, a new series of messages. Typically, our church, we preach expository messages, which means we just kind of pick a book of the Bible and just kind of work through it, you know? And usually we do kind of like a chapter or half a chapter per week, you know, kind of as a, you know, they put the chapter marks there for a reason. So we kind of break it down like that. And during the kind of part of the fall, we're going to slow way down. Going from like a chapter a week, we're just going to do like one verse a week, which is a kind of change of pace, which will end up resulting in us talking more topically, meaning like each verse has a certain topic. That's the topic we're going to talk about. And what we're going to be doing this fall is going through part of the Sermon on the Mount found in Matthew 5. It's called the Beatitudes. All right. So, are y'all catching up on the computer back there or something? Yeah. Okay. Computer is getting old and sometimes has a mind of its own. But it's called the Beatitudes. I want to pray really quick, and then I'll tell you a little bit about it. So, Father, we just pray that as we study your word, that you would speak to us. We're literally looking at your words, Jesus. I pray that we would hear your voice speaking these things to our heart. You would speak to our heart and change our lives in your precious name. And I pray that we would be open to receive whatever it is you would want to give us. In Jesus' name, amen. So we'll be looking at the Beatitudes one at a time as we go through the next couple weeks. And as I said, this is from what's called in the Bible the Sermon on the Mount. Because like Jesus, when he came, he did a lot of miracles and stuff with people, but he also preached a lot of stuff. And back in the day, they didn't have like recordings, so he'd be like, oh, get the tape from that. You know, it wasn't like that. Like you preached this stuff over and over again, you know what I mean? And then sometimes they would record them down. And in the Bible, they have several examples of places where Jesus is teaching, and it's like recorded. And so the main section that's called the Beatitudes is from the beginning of what's called the Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus preaching on the Mount, you know. But you also see some of these there's a version in Luke which is called the Sermon on the Plain. And you're like, well, wait, hold on a minute. Is the Bible wrong? Like, you know, like why are these? They don't. You know, it's like, okay, listen. He gave the same sort of messages in different places. All right, and that's part of what I want to do as we go through this fall is to go through these individually and talk about them, but also show how they're not just like exclusive or individual. They connect to other things Jesus did, or other things Jesus said, or other things that are in the Bible. Like there's a continuity to all of it, okay? And so some of the Beatitudes that we see listed in Matthew show up in the Luke version, and I'll kind of, when those happen, I'll bring those up. But it's not because it's because it was a different message, probably given at a different time, but it was of the same content. You know, the content doesn't change. But there's a list of these. And you'll see how they kind of function. Blessed are you, if da-da-da-da-da. You know, some of you are familiar with this, pretty famous Bible stuff. But each week, we're only going to talk about one, but I wanted to read each week the whole chunk. And today I've asked Dalton to come up. I just asked him 5 seconds ago, so he's not prepared. But I'm going to have a different person read them each week as a whole. So let's listen as he reads through all of the Beatitudes, and then we'll talk about the first one today, okay?
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Amen. Thank you. So that's some pretty deep stuff, huh? It sounds even deeper when Dalton reads it, doesn't it? Yeah. Like, whoa. Yeah, this is pretty deep stuff. That's why I want to do them one at a time. But just a little bit of background really quick. This word Beatitudes, you're like, what is, I don't understand what we're saying there. It comes from the Latin root word, which is like beatus, which means blessed. That's why they say blessed. That's the thing. But really, the word there that's getting translated as blessed is actually a Greek word, which is like makarios or something. And it's kind of like when you say to congratulations to someone. Like blessed is just kind of the best English. I guess I don't speak Greek, so, but like there's, it's apparently there's not a direct translation, so this is the best one we kind of got, but it doesn't carry with all of it. It's kind of like you're saying to somebody, congratulations when this is happening because of da-da-da-da-da. But if you were paying attention to some of that list, you'd be like, congratulations to what? It should be confusing like that. These are pretty deep sayings, okay? And it made me think of this iceberg that when you have deep sayings of Jesus, it's like an iceberg. You see some of it, and most of it's like still down there somewhere. And in your life, these sayings will be like this. Because during the message today, I'll do the best I got. I'll give you what I can. But we're only going to cover the top part. There's a lot more. And how it matters is a lot more. Like these things that Jesus said can speak and do speak effectively and correctly to the deepest, darkest, most horrible things that happen in human experience. This is God talking now. So it reaches to the deep, like when you go, well, what about that? It can speak to that. But I'm not sure we can get there today. You see what I mean? So I'm going to introduce you to the tip of the iceberg, and you carry it with you for the rest of your life and see, how it goes. Also, I thought about this. When you see something, you have something being like multifaceted. Even though we're going to go through these things like one at a time. I have a picture of a diamond here. You say like multifaceted means like many faces. Like a diamond has lots of different, you can see it from different angles. And when you see it from different angles, you see different, I guess, brilliance or different colors or different kinds of things. And we're going to look at different facets. And they may not all fit together in the same way of like, part 1, part 2, part 3. And then the conclusion, they're going to almost seem like, oh, now I'm seeing something completely different. But it's still part of that same thing. And I'd say, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. It also made me think of like a prism. Where a prism, you shine white light through it, but then because of the wavelengths of the light passing through the glass, they bend at a different angle, and it ends up smearing the light out to where you could see the individual color components of that light. And as we go through each one of these things by themselves, we're going to be like, well, look at this green part. And you go, well, look at this yellow part. And you're like, well, are those different? Like, they're actually part of the same thing. They just, when you slow down, you can kind of see. And these are just pictures of how I'm going to, trying to help us see how we're going to talk through it, because we'll be talking about yellow, and then we'll be talking about red, and you might go, well, do these things even have anything to do with each other? But they're part of the same light, and that's kind of how this is going to work. So hopefully I've confused you enough that we can move forward. No, the other thing is this. When you read these statements, you're tended to sort them in your mind into a way of thinking that you're familiar with, okay? They're not simple if-then kind of statements, You find the Bible has commands in it. And these aren't exactly commands, okay? So I have a list of things that these aren't, all right? So these aren't commands. Like there's plenty of commands. You go in the Old Testament, there's lots of commands. We have 10 main ones, as Christian people. Thou shalt not murder, this kind of thing. You're like, oh, okay, I get it. These don't function exactly like that. They're not kind of a to-do list for us to do. They're also not like virtues. Like if you're looking at a Bible or on your phone, you can see some of these sound like a good thing. Blessed are the merciful. You're like, okay, I kind of want to be that, but it's like, blessed are those who mourn. You're like, what? Is that a virtue? Like, am I supposed to try to mourn now? Like, you see, they don't work like that. Another thing, they're not proverbs. We got a book in the Bible called Proverbs, and if you come to the men's Bible study, if you're a men's, you should come, and it's great. We've been talking through the Proverbs, and there's just a lot of stuff in there, and they tell you how the world is. And they tell you what it is with God, because it'll be like, I'm paraphrasing, but there's a lot of them that go like, if you're lazy and you don't do stuff, you ain't going to have stuff. But if you work hard, you'll have even leftovers that you could share. Like this is kind of how Proverbs work, and you can think of some of them. These don't exactly work like that, because they're kind of like, they just don't function that way. There's something else. They're also not laws. Laws are kind of similar to commands, but I'm just kind of trying to cover some. They just don't fit easily into any of these categories. And ultimately, what we'll get to today is these statements only make sense and can only be fulfilled because Jesus says them and he's God. They're not just blanket statements about right and wrong. They're like, this is true because I'm God. This is what he's saying. That kind of thing. That's what we're going to get to. So I'll just tell you the end before we get there. That's what he's saying. He's like, this isn't true in the sense of like, well, this is just how the world is. No, it's not. He's like, it's true because I'm here and I'm God, and I'm going to see to it that this is the case. That's what he's saying. And so, but they also kind of, which we'll get into this more in other weeks, they're restatements of things you see Jesus living out. You know, we want to be people who live out. You know, we say, we follow Jesus. Okay, good. You know, it's like, so do you just tell people that or do you actually do it? Well, we want to do it, you know, not word only. Indeed. We read this a couple weeks ago. And so these are packaged restatements of a lot of things we see Jesus living out and doing, and even other teachings that he says. And so let's look at the one we're going to look at today. Not too long today, just blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I'm going to let you think about that just for a minute. Blessed, because I don't say blessed anymore. Blessed, you're blessed, or congratulations when you're poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. That's a confounding statement. Well, let's get into, you know, what this probably means. Tip of the iceberg, right? A lot of times people kind of try to use this one as like a reminder for us to be humble, you know? And I don't think that's the best reading of this thing, all right? Because you start to get thinking something like this. Like maybe if I'm humble, if I can be humble, God will reward me with the kingdom of heaven, okay? This is a weird way to start thinking. It's actually, it's actually, we need to be very careful whenever our thinking starts to be, God owes me this. The moment you start getting into that track, you're probably headed down the wrong path, okay? There are some places where God says, if you do this, I'll faithfully, yeah, I'm with you. But like when you start thinking God owes me, you start getting off pretty quick. And so this can turn into that almost immediately. And it's not saying that being humble isn't biblical. It absolutely is. One of the most famous ones is a proverb, Proverbs 3:34, which James quotes in the book of James. God, he mocks the proud, or he mocks proud mockers, but shows favor to the humble and oppressed. There's other places about being, like there's a lot about pride in the book of Proverbs. So like, this is not like an excuse to be prideful. But it's just probably not what this is saying. Because also being poor in spirit is not a goal that you should like seek, okay? If you follow what I mean. We'll get a little deeper. But we have to start, if we want to really understand what this is talking about, we have to start with this word poor, okay? Because the language there literally means destitute beggar person. So it's blessed are you when you're destitute and have nothing, because yours is the kingdom of heaven. We like to in this version, in the Matthew version, we like to spiritualize it, because in spirit though, right? You know, this is where it's helpful to look at the Luke version, because Jesus was teaching. He's not like, well, that time I meant, is he like he's meaning the same sort of thing. In Luke 6, it says this, blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. You're like, where'd the in spirit part go? We're like, well, if you go down to 26:24, there's like a mirror, a response to this. But woe to you who are rich, for you've already received your comfort. You're like, whoa, that sounds like he's talking about being poor. And you're like, yeah, he is. And you go, well, what does that have to do with the one we're looking at? It has a lot to do with it. Because it means more than money, okay? Like not having money, obviously you're poor. But it means poor of anything or everything. Or any, you know, all the things. You could be, it's obvious, financially poor. You know, that's the first one. You know, I have no money to pay for, like, I'm out. I'm poor. That's what we would think of if I said poor. But also, you can be out of options. You know, you can be powerless in a situation. You can be taken advantage of. Poor people who are truly poor, have nothing, they can be taken advantage of. And they are. The Bible's full of that. You know, there's some prophets like, you know, even the poor man's field produces a crop, but it can be like, but I don't want to say it wrong. It can be stolen, you know, because it's like you can't do anything to defend it, you know. Or you could feel out of place, socially poor. You know, no one to care for you, no one that you know. I mean, you could fill in the blank, you know, completely empty of anything of any value that the world has, you know. So if I said to you, congratulations because you have nothing that the world values at all, does that sound crazy? A little bit. It should. You know, like, congrats. You finally have nothing. You're finally the ultimate loser. Congratulations. And he's not being sarcastic. You know, it shouldn't sound like something you would want to congratulate someone on. Kevin and I, as aforementioned, had an experience of being transportation poor this last week. We had the wonderful opportunity. I took Anna on a kind of graduation senior trip thing, and and Kevin came along with us as one does. But no, it was fun. But we had this wonderful trip. It was like, all the way to the last flight that we had to catch in Boston, and I get a text on my phone like, "Oh, your flight's canceled. Sorry, have a good day." And you're like, "Wait, what? What was that?" And then the long hours of lines started. And I called, I called the people. They're like, "Oh, yeah, you don't have to wait in this line at the airport and talk to a human being. You can call this phone number." And I was like, "Okay." I call the phone number, and the AI thing's like, "Oh, your current hold time is 239 minutes." And I'm like, so I did the math. Like, that's 4 hours. You think I'm just going to sit here, So, and then another delay, and then another delay. So, it wasn't like they said, "Hey, you know what? You're supposed to be back Saturday night, but you're going to be back Wednesday." If they had said that, we might have been a little more. It was like, "You'll be back tomorrow." Okay. Like, I mean, tomorrow. They're like, okay. I mean, tomorrow. You're like, okay, So the thing kept extending. Then they put us in New York. Then we're in New York, and then we get stuck again. They're canceling flights, That's the time we're waiting in line. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until I talk to a human being. And I'm standing in line with other people who are having the same experience, also transportation poor, And it did dawn on me how this applied to what we were going through. But we were tired. We were frustrated. It had happened already, And I was in lines with people I didn't have the means, but they had the means. They're like, "I'm spending money to get home. I don't care. If there's an option, I'm taking it, And so we're standing there in line for several hours with people with money that were ready to do anything you could, and there wasn't anything to do. And then Kevin's getting texts, and if you sent one of these texts to him, I kind of apologize to you, but not really, because after it being in line for 90 minutes, and you get a text from people, Kevin got these texts, I did not, they said, "Why don't you rent a car?" And we were like, "Thanks, genius. That wasn't the first thing we searched on our phones 2 hours ago." It was like, come on, there aren't any. One guy found one car available in the Bronx for $2,000 to rent to go home, and a guy was about to take it. And I was like, "Can we ride with you?" It was like that kind of thing. The Caribbean lady behind me in line was like, "Well, there is the China bus." And I said, "What's the China bus?" And she said, "There's this sketchy bus you can take from Chinatown that drives down between there and Orlando and drops people off in different places. It's like $100. And I was like, and the guy in front of me was like, "You're not taking the China bus." I was like, "Well, I mean, we get home tomorrow," anyway. We did not take the China bus. We got home like normal, whatever. But I would have. I wasn't against it. The point is, when you're transportation poor, it feels different. A statement like this, if someone had said, "Congratulations, you can't catch your flight," or "They canceled your plane," I'd have been like, "What is wrong with you?" Do you follow what I'm saying? Or, "Why don't you rent a car?" was kind of my version of that. And as we were walking through sketchy part of Queens in the middle of the night to get to the hotel that we were going to, I wouldn't have accepted that text with a lot of joy, We had no options. We were stuck. We were at the mercy of other people. And I'll just be honest, it didn't feel good at all. I didn't like any of it, and we were jet-lagged and exhausted and all this kind of stuff. But God has a way of putting you somewhere so you can finally see something, Part of how you can start to understand these Beatitudes, Dallas Willard really helps with this. Dallas Willard wrote a book called The Divine Conspiracy. It's a little heady book at times, but there's a chunk of it that's about the Beatitudes, and it's really helpful because he starts to explain that these statements from Jesus, because you can't clearly systematize them, like I'm saying. Some of them sound like a good thing, like merciful, that sounds good. Mourning doesn't sound good. So you can't put them in the same, you're like, okay, what is he talking about here? He's like, that's not what this is getting at all, really. What he's really saying is not, "Blessed are you because of that," okay? Which is kind of how this thing is thinking. I'm blessed because I'm merciful and I'll receive mercy. It's not really what he's saying. It's really more saying, "Blessed are you in spite of this, not because of it." Which sounds a little bit more like, when you don't feel blessed, you are. When you're walking through the sketchy part of town at night, trying to get to this hotel, and everybody that's watching you knows you're not supposed to be there, you don't feel very blessed, but you are. That's what he's like, you are. But not just because that's how the world functions, it's because God says so. And that surely does matter a lot. Because when you're in a bad situation, you don't feel very blessed. That's why you got to remind people this. Because if you knew it already, you'd know it already. This is the first clue. Jesus himself. This is Jesus talking. This is Jesus preaching to people. This is Jesus saying, okay, y'all are listening to me now. Here's the stuff. Jesus himself. If you had one of those Bibles that is red letter, this is red letter stuff, you know. Jesus talking to us. And you go back when Jesus started his ministry, he had the audacity. Because a lot of this time, we like to talk, it's kind of in vogue now to be like, Jesus is cool, but I'm not a Christian or something like that. Or I like Jesus. I like the things he taught. He's a wise teacher. And I'm like, my response to that is like, you obviously don't take him very seriously. Because the dude literally said, I'm God. So you're like, well, leave that part out. It's like, okay, you can't. Like, he said that. So you're like, well, it's like, well, he was wrong about that. It's like, well, then that puts into question the depth of his other stuff he's saying. This gets to where C.S. Lewis is that liar, lunatic, Lord thing. Like, it really does matter. Like, if the guy's saying he's God, that's the only context in which these statements even make any sense. And that's so fundamental and so basic, it sounds like a well-dubbed, but it matters a lot. Because you try to tease out the values, like you can kind of employ them without the whole Jesus being God thing in your life, you know, in my life, in our lives, like in an actual way, including missing planes and all this kind of stuff. Jesus himself has the audacity to get out the scroll at the beginning of his ministry, unroll it at the synagogue, and read Isaiah 62. Isaiah is like the biggest prophetic book of the Old Testament. He reads it, and you remember what he says? The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to what? Preach what? Good news to the who? Poor. And other things. And other things. But that's the first one. To preach good news to the poor. And then he rolls it up and he says, that's fulfilled today in your hearing. And everybody knew what he meant because they're like, we're going to kill you because you're blaspheming God by saying you're God. So Jesus says that at the beginning of when he's teaching stuff, and now he's saying something like this. What is this good news to the poor? Jesus is saying the people the world doesn't value, God does. The people the world doesn't value at all, God does. The people I don't value, God does. The people you don't value, God does. So that includes everybody we don't like. But it also includes us. And some of us, that's funny. And to some of us, you needed to hear that. Because some of us really hate other people. And some of us really hate ourselves. And God's saying, you hate yourself, I don't. You don't value yourself, I do. It kind of puts all of us in that same thing. You hate your neighbor. He goes, I don't. I loved him. And he's like, you hate yourself. He goes, I don't hate you. I love you. I made you. It cuts through all of that. And that's what he's saying here. You're blessed. And it's not just because of a forever far away heaven thing. He's also meaning now. And he's also meaning how this works out among us. Because as people who follow Jesus, and we know that he's saying that. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon you because of preaching good news to the poor. And, you know, do you think we could say, and in meaning poor beyond just financial stuff, but including that, you can't exclude that, but including that, do you think we could say faithfully as like, I follow Jesus, and since he cares about that, I'll leave that to him, and I don't worry about it at all? Obviously not, right? You know, so as Christ followers, we have to care for the poor in our midst, all of the poor, different kinds, to be like him or to be faithfully following him at all. Tim Keller said it this way, that the statement can't mean, or doesn't mean, I'm reading it wrong. This statement, blessed are the poor, when he's talking about financially poor or otherwise, he's like, well, yeah. He's like, it means more than that, but it can't mean less than this. The gospel is only for the spiritually poor, but especially for the actually poor. Those are the only ones that receive it. And so, well, how do we do this? Because like God has endless means and endless ability to love people. I don't have that. I don't have an endless ability to care about things. I mean, we talk about that. Like if you've been paying attention to the news, there's been horrible earthquakes in multiple countries this week. And I'm sure there's tons of people suffering. And there's times we have to actually take action in those. And I don't always know when that is. You don't know I don't know, and I can't just be led around by my own sense of guilt. But there's also this, God puts it in there for a reason. We have to sort these things out together. The best guide I found, John Stott, who's a famous Christian person of a generation or two ago, had a guide that was like this about how to deal with this kind of value system. It says that we should be extremely content in who we are, what we have. You could put this as materially as you want. Like, be extremely content in what you have. Paul says this a lot, content in all circumstances, this kind of thing. Be extremely content with what we have and very generous. So I don't know what that means for you, and I don't know what it means for me, but I think that sums it up pretty well as like a value. Like, I want to do this, then I think this is what it would look like. But let's move to another facet or another color in the prism. A statement like this, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We need to realize that we're poor. Like, it's not just talking about them poor people. Like, we are the poor people. That Luke version says, blessed are you who are poor. And it says, like, talking to his disciples. And everybody like, bro, what? And he's saying that to, he's like, you're poor. And it's because like this, we love to think we got all things worked out, right? You're like, I got this taken care of. I can take care of this, or that we can handle it. I mean, guys, if you're like me, you definitely want that, right? Like, I want people to think I got things under control, I got this worked out, we're good. If I'm going to post anything, it's certainly going to be about something like that, look at me, man, or like, I'll take care of myself, or even, just one more life hack and I'll be there. You know what I mean? I'm almost there, but, and then I can tell everybody else about it, that kind of thing. Well, you haven't yet realized the truth. You haven't seen this yet. You're not there yet. That goes back to that, like, thinking God owes us something kind of thinking. I got my life together, so God has to take care of me. And he's like, no, you're not poor in spirit yet. Or you haven't, and really what I think he's saying is, like, you haven't seen how things really are yet. Again, Tim Keller said it. He called this middle class in spirit. He had some good stuff on this, I thought. He's people who are unconsciously believe that they have earned God's favor through hard work and moral behavior, rather than recognizing their total spiritual bankruptcy. I want to read that again, because there are a lot of words. People, middle class in spirit, not poor in spirit, middle class in spirit. We might find this a very comfortable place. People who unconsciously believe they have earned God's favor through hard work, moral behavior, rather than recognizing their total spiritual bankruptcy. It's a little uncomfortable, isn't it? It's like, oh, I like when God and I are cool and I do the God stuff. Then he, I do it his way, and then he rewards me. And, he owes me because I take, it's that kind of. It's very sneaky, because we don't do the right thing to earn God's favor. God gives us unmerited favor, and as a response, we do the right thing. Now, that's a very small difference. It's huge, but it sneaks in. The beauty of realizing, because some people, I'll say it this way, some people call this a religious spirit. It's all about earning things, But the gospel teaches us that none are righteous. Romans 3:10 says this, as it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There was no one who understands, no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Only the spiritually poor actually realize they have nothing to offer. These kind of experiences in our lives, even something silly as being transportationally poor, as I was meaning, it really shows you, like, I actually don't have anything to offer to this situation. I'm totally at the mercy of other people, other things. I can't fix this, And it was frustrating, but it was kind of a picture into the spiritual reality of, like, I can't actually do this on my own, as much as I would want to, And it's hard to realize, because some of us are pretty talented. You know what I mean? I know I'm telling you some of this story that some of you are like, that wouldn't have happened to me. I'm like, okay, fine. I hope it doesn't, But when you're standing in the 3-hour line and people are texting you, why don't you rent a car? We'll see how you feel about it, because the point is, some of us are talented. Some of us are creative. Some of us have means, you know what I mean? And so when we hit situations, we're used to solving things. So it's very hard for us to admit, I actually can't fix this spiritual thing. I can't fix my life. I actually can't fix the sin in my life. I can't fix it. It takes you a lot longer sometimes to realize that. Jesus is consistent when he teaches about this, when he talks about the rich guy. That story always bothers me so much because he's like, what do I have to do, inherit? He's like, well, love, Lord, this kind of stuff. He's like, yeah, you got it. He goes, go sell everything and come follow me. Now, if you pay attention in these Gospels, Jesus doesn't say that to very many people like that. We call them disciples. He's like, hey, guys, come follow me. They dropped their nets and followed him, right? Whoa, Then the other guy that's full of demons, he casts the demons out, and the guy's like, can I go with you? And he's like, no, you need to go home and tell him what, he doesn't, that guy's not a disciple, you see, like one of the 12 disciples. Then he comes to this guy, what do I do to inherit the kingdom of God? He's like, well, what do you, it's like love God with all your heart, soul, mind, love your neighbors and stuff. He's like, yeah. He's like, I do all of that stuff. The 2 biggest commandments we just went through. Jesus is like, yeah, you do. He's like, so sell all that stuff you got. Come follow me. That's like the 13th apostle, And the guy goes away. He says, no. That's tragic. That one bothers me so much. He's like, he actually says, come follow me. And the guy says no. And the disciples are like, what's up with that guy? Like, I thought he was legit. And he's like, he is legit. He's like, but he's got a lot of stuff. It was a big deal, And Jesus says, it's, when it comes to rich of all kinds, again, we don't have to get so stuck on money. He's like, blessed are the poor, yours is the kingdom of heaven. And he's like, this rich guy has a really hard time not seeing his purpose, his identity, his solutions, all of his things in his riches, and giving that up for God. And he says, no. That's a really scary warning to all of us, especially if you feel like you got your stuff worked out. Because you start to go, well, maybe I don't need God so much. You don't say that, but you say that. You think that. You do that, And it shows up when you get to the edge of something and you go, oh, I really don't have anything, How do you act then? Or can you even accept that? It's hard to realize. And really, and this one's hard. This one stings a little bit. Some of us who are the nicest are really trying to make our case to God and the universe based on our own niceness. And this is really this horrible religious thing. You're like, that guy is the nicest person I know. I go, yeah, he's trying to earn it. That's how tricky this stuff is. You have to realize that we have nothing to offer. Really. Eugene Peterson, when he was Eugene Peterson, I like him a lot. He translated the Bible, kind of the language of his day, trying to make it understandable. And it was a couple decades ago, called The Message. So it's like a paraphrase of the Bible. And when he ran across this is how he did it. He said, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. And then it says, with less of you, there is more of God and his rule. So there's this kind of thing that happens when you finally realize, I don't have any other option. I guess I'll have to trust God. See how that kind of sounds silly? You're like, I've tried everything else. I guess I better trust God now. And you would think, like, well, for following Jesus, shouldn't that be the first thing that we do? You're like, yeah, I guess it is. But it isn't so often. You're like, I tried everything else I got. I guess I'm finally going to have to trust God. God, it's in your hands. He's like, okay, good, finally. Finally, you come to the kingdom of heaven, Because he's like, you keep thinking you're going to do all this yourself, When the blessing comes, and it doesn't matter how small it is. Because like I said, these things speak to the worst, most horrible things that happen in human history, human whatever. But even in sillier things, like our being transportationally poor, they're a blessing. This experience is a blessing to you because it gives you just the tiniest little window of how little control you actually have over your life. We think we have so much control over our lives. And then something small happens and disrupts it. We experience it usually once or twice a year as a hurricane, maybe, in Florida. You're like, oh, dang, that came through and it like wrecked a place, It shows you how little we actually have, It's like, well, we got this all worked out. We got this great place, and it's just gone. I went to Mexico Beach after Hurricane Michael came through over there, I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. There just was nothing left. It was gone. Completely gone. And I've been back there since, and it's like there again. And you're like, hope y'all built it better. But like the thing is, no, I'm serious. I mean, it's like these give you a little taste. Because if you go to that like a month before, you're like, what a beautiful beach town. Like, what could ever happen? And then it's just gone. It's very humbling, you know. Or, you know, anything in your life where just one little thump, you know, when we had COVID come through, people could not handle the fact that I can't do whatever I want all the time. You know, this jerk's going to tell me what to do, and you freaked out. We all freaked out about it. You know, it's like that was nothing. Nothing at all. You know, somebody was just being polite to people, and we couldn't even do that. You know, I don't have to be polite, but I want this kind of thing. Like, we can't handle this lack of control. But ultimately, you actually don't have it. It's an illusion. Some of us have something medical happen to our lives where I have complete control of my, and then poof, you have a stroke or something like that, and then the rest of your life, you're completely dependent on other people. That little piece is a window into this is how it actually is. You just never want to admit it to yourself because it's really scary. Really scary. It's a window to the truth. You actually need God in the most ultimate way that you possibly could think of. All the way down to the simplest little thing of like, I need a plane, you know? You actually have to face your actual vulnerability and your actual meaninglessness. The meaninglessness of everything that you do on a worldly scale. Because you can see I'm about to turn the last or two more really quick facets. These statements remind us that we find Jesus in the darkest places. God doesn't, like, N.T. Wright used to say that Jesus didn't just show up and float around being God all over the place. You know what I mean? Like, he experienced the worst of it. There's plenty in Isaiah about the suffering servant, which is part of how we understand that Jesus was even the Messiah at all. There's horrible things described of what will happen to this person. And people would read that because that book existed before Jesus came. Like, they knew about it. And they go, I don't know exactly how this is going to happen because is this all of Israel? It seems like it's one guy, but how will he experience this and what will that do? Like, people debated this stuff, and then Jesus came and fulfilled it. But he's not floating around and saying like, well, Jesus never experienced loss. Yes, he did. Jesus never experienced rejection. Absolutely he did. Physical pain. Yes, all of he experienced it all. You know, and you can see you see a little window into this. In Jesus came, and his parents take an offering. You were commanded, and like the Jewish people, they were commanded to give this offering to God when a child is born. It's like a blessing, and it's in Leviticus, and I think Deuteronomy 2. I think where it's like when you have a child, take a lamb, bring it to the thing, they'll bless it. They do this thing. It's a blessing for the child, you know. But it has a little thing that says, but if you can't afford that, you can get 2 doves, and it will, you know, because we know everybody can't afford it. So if you can't afford it, you can do 2 doves. But that's really just for the poor people. But when Jesus' mom and dad take him to be blessed, they bring 2 doves. So he even knows, like when you say, well, you don't know where I come from. Well, he does. You see what I'm saying? He's experienced the lowest of the lows. Jesus, you don't just see Jesus hanging out with the cool kids. See what I'm saying? Or when things are going good. Like, man, look, my life's so blessed. This is how we talk. Like, if somebody said, my life's so blessed on Instagram, I don't think they're going to be talking about this poor experience in their life. Do you see what I'm saying? We wouldn't be. They wouldn't be. They don't. They try to be like, oh, I don't know why God's blessing me so much. Look at this boat I have, or whatever. You know, nothing's wrong with a boat, but, you know, boats are fine. Don't get weird. But I'm just trying to, that weird bragging stuff. We want to be heading away from the, you know, all that stuff. 2 Corinthians 8:9, Paul, he says this, for you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that through his poverty you might become rich. You've got to see more than money in that, okay? Jesus knows what it's like to be experiencing poverty financially, socially, all the other things. And because of what he experienced through that, he offers us the kingdom of heaven, eternity, all of these things, and the community of people to follow him. Like, frankly, the only way we got back was we changed our flight to land in Savannah, which is not here, just in case you were wondering. But we had some people like that we knew. Brian Butterstein picked us up, drove us down. Vance came up and got, like, we had, you know, and I was talking to Carrie because Carrie was like, you know, I can't come, I can't do that. And I was like, don't worry, we know people. And we were blessed because of this community. I was like, I can call friends that will help us. And they did, you know. And also, it was kind of cool because we got stuck in Boston, and Brenna Butterstein lives in Boston, so we hung out with her. So that was kind of cool. And then when we got stuck in New York, we were like, well, my cousin lives there, so I got to see my cousin. So it was like, you know, being invited into this family, which we talked about family a couple weeks ago. Is the only reason I'm bringing this back up. Is it's not just because eternally Jesus offers us the kingdom of heaven, which is this eternal blessing that can't even, you know, nothing even compares to it. But even in the now, the here and now, being loved by people when you don't deserve it, you know, that's a little taste of heaven now, you know, or that, like, I know people will help me, or I know any of those kind of feelings. That's a little taste of heaven now, and that's part of our job to do that. And then the last thing I'm going to say, so Scott, you go ahead and play the prayer music because we'll just close with that, is this is only true, this whole thing, all of these things are only true because of Jesus and him being who he said he was. These aren't just like aphorisms or some sort of, wow, that is how the world is, isn't it? No, that isn't how the world is. The world works, the world is this version of some sort of survival of the fittest. You know, you're on your own, you better do it, whatever, you know, stinks to be you or whatever. If that happened, you know, there's no reason behind any of it, you know, sorry, I guess it doesn't, you know, whatever, you know, there's no value to any of this, and go for it, you know. And I don't think I'm trying to put this in bad terms. I think this is kind of what we're saying, people say they believe, you know. There's no meaning behind any of this. There's no point. You know, I always feel like, well, then what do you call something right or wrong? Like, it's kind of weird. But the point is, it doesn't matter. Survival of the fittest survive, and they get, you know, winners write the rules or write the histories or whatever, you know. We'll go on. And that's so utterly unsatisfying. You know, like, there's got to be more than that. You know, but if you want to live that way, go live that way. But you're going to have a really hard time actually living that way. Because there's something deep inside of you that says, yeah, but that's wrong. I go, why? 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 Why is it wrong? I know why I think it's wrong, and I know why we should think it's wrong. But, like, in the world, like, why is it wrong? Why is it wrong? It's like, it doesn't. You can exploit whoever you want. It doesn't matter. Cheat. It's like, that's how you get to the top. It doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong. Like, why does it? Based on what? It's like, oh, well, it's not fair to other people. It's not fair. It is. I'm being the strongest. I'm being the strongest mentally. This is how the world actually is. But that isn't actually how God created the world. And something deep inside everybody knows that. And that's really the only thing you need to know to, like, this is just explaining the rest. Like, the fact that you know, C.S. Lewis said it this way, the fact that you know there's something right you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing it explains the whole thing. And if you could make that go away for yourself, atheist person, you probably could try to pull that off. But you can't. It's like in there. Eternity's in there. And if you're saying, well, I want to understand that, now you're going to start talking about this. But you can only understand that, the truth, starting from the basis of the cross of what Jesus, God, did, and then him explaining it. And he's going to say things like this: blessed are the people who the world thinks have utterly no value, who are not the fittest, who are the lamest, the loserist, the whateverist, the most forgotten, the irrelevant, the pointless. They're blessed because I've come and died for them, and I'm giving them the whole kingdom. The kingdom of heaven, and nobody can take it away from them. It doesn't matter. And it matters not at all if they accomplish nothing in this life that the world values. I valued them. And that's the truth for every single one of us, even the one of us that thinks like, well, I want to be like Elon Musk and have the most. It doesn't matter. He's the same way. None of this matters. Every once in a while you get a taste where you're like, yeah, that is how it is. It is how it is. He's telling us how it is. But you forget immediately. You go, well, yeah, but I'm worried about, and yeah, what, but I can't have that. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's only this way because he says so and because he is who he is. If he's a crazy person or even just a really nice person or somebody might look up to, like some kind of like, this person sacrificed a lot for other people like Gandhi or something like that, this would have no value. It doesn't work like that. It's not just a wise saying. It's Jesus saying, blessed are the poor in spirit because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. because I say so. Not because they've earned it, not because they deserve it, because I love them and I'm giving it to them. And there's nothing anybody can do to take it away. We're not, this is the last thing I'm going to say. We're not trusting this statement. You could trust a proverb as a wise saying. Because there's even, when you read through the book of Proverbs, and you should, you're going to find things you're like, I've heard other people say that, because some of them it's just wisdom, Like I said, you work hard, you see a reward. You're lazy when the harvest comes. There's nothing to harvest. You're like, yeah, that kind of sounds how things are. Like there's just wise statements in there, and you could kind of back away from that as a person and be like, well, that's just how it is. I'm fine with that. I'll accept that. I'll put faith in that statement. Okay, these statements don't work like that. We're putting faith in Jesus, who's saying these things, and because he's who he is, these things become true. They don't stand alone like that. They won't let you do that because it's not blessed to be poor. I was not blessed by the situation of being transportationally poor and waiting in lines for hours. Also for people to text me about how easy it was to solve the situation I was in. I was not blessed by that, But it did open my eyes to just a tiny, tiny little bit to what my life really is like. I literally can't do anything without God. Every single thing is dependent on him. And ultimately, eternity is dependent on him. And thank God for his love for us. That's it. That's the whole thing. So let's stand. I'm going to pray. And then if you want to spend any time in prayer with God, sometimes when we talk through these things, God brings something very specific up in your mind. I want to encourage you to respond, hold on to that, because it's not just him saying, it's not like you going, oh, that's interesting, I thought about that, I'm going to try to let that go away and then never deal with it. It's an invitation from God, okay? We have people that will be up here that are part of our prayer team that are willing to pray with you for anything. It's something that has to do with the what we just talked about, or something that, has nothing to do with it at all, or nothing. I'll be up here, or we have this space up here that's available if you want to come, just spend time praying to God and say, God, that thing you just put on my heart, it's time we deal with that. There's space for that. Also, other parents do go get your kids. There is a playground and this kind of thing. But this time afterwards, we don't all leave. I don't know if you've noticed. Some of us are like, I got to get out of here. Try to not do that. This is a good time to hang out with people and get to know people. And if you don't know somebody that's beside you, introduce yourself before you leave. Okay, even if you're like, I've had all my people time I can handle just a little bit more. Okay, because you need to know the people that you're in church with. And this is one of the best times to do it. And we hang out here usually for longer than whatever. Anyway, you can stay as long as you need to. But I'm going to pray, and then this space will be available down here for prayer. Otherwise, pick up your kids. But you spend time, you can hang out and get to know each other because we are supposed to live this stuff out as a community. So, Father, I pray that you would help us to take in the truth of these words, that we are blessed even when we feel that we have the least. Not because of that, but because of who you are and because you say so. And I pray that you would bless us to see how that matters in our day-to-day lives, and how we understand our situation, how we understand you, how we understand other people, and how we treat each other. And I pray that you bless this church, these people, as we spend time here together. And I pray that you would guide us in this week to live this out as faithful followers of you. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord be gracious to you, lift up his countenance towards you, and give you peace in Jesus' name.